startup dance there. Right. In case you don't know me, I'm Alex Zeitler. I'm the CTO, Chief Technical Overlord of of Guerilla T. We're a small indie games company based here in Dundee. You might have heard about some of the titles we've done. The most popular one probably the Quest Array, and obviously that mobile game that helps curing cancer. And well, I'm here tonight to talk about independence. Look, don't be scared. Not the whole political Scottish independence referendum stuff. I leave the debate of that to people that are more clever than I am. No, I'm talking about independence as in independent developers, or the indie scene, as we are called. And we need to talk because I think the indie scene does have a problem at the moment. Now, two maybe even, because there's the one that everybody's talking about and there's the real one, that my perception at least. The one that everybody's talking about is that there's some mythical indie bubble that is bursting and there's a lot of gnashing and wailing of teeth or something like that, or wailing and gnashing of teeth the other way around, I don't care, all over the internet. And if you haven't heard about the indie bubble bursting, it's basically people complaining that now apparently you can't just put a game on Steam and instantly make millions anymore. Yeah, that's effectively what it is. And you see, according to their legend, in the days of old, before Steam had opened the valves, yes, that pun was intended. I know it was a bad one, I'm sorry for it. No, I'm not. Before Steam has opened the valves and flooded the market with their greenlit games, apparently all you needed to do was get your game up on the marketplace and boom, instant gajillions of cash right in your pockets. And then Greenlight came, and what really didn't help was that a couple of publishers realized that they could take all their backlog, the games that they made 10 years ago, and shove them up on Steam as well. And now visibility is a bloody nightmare. Nobody sees your game anymore, and us poor indies are starving, and it's all very, very horrible, and nobody makes any money anymore. Do you know what? I call fucking bullshit on that. I mean, let's be fair. I think people are mistaking causation and correlation here once again, because in my opinion, the games that were successful on Steam were not successful because they were on Steam. They were on Steam because they were bound to be successful. If you look at those games, those were always the ones that either, where the developers were lucky enough to actually gather a big community, or worked hard enough to gather a big community beforehand, or more likely, they had financial backing from some publisher or external investors or something like that to just force market those games to success, whether they'd be on Steam or not. Yeah. So, I mean, those are exceptions in my opinion. They'll always be there. There'll always be exceptions, but there's no bubble, It's only a few. By the way, you are not the exception. Unless you are, then fair play to you. But so that was the first problem. The other one, which I think is more important, though, is that with all that flood of small games and tons of clones coming out, I think the indie scene is a bit losing its identity. It's a bit losing what it means to be indie. Right now, apparently indie has become some sort of genre. Yeah, like in the music business, some flashy labels that some marketing guy is tacking onto every game that hasn't been produced with a 10 million budget, just because it's cool and edgy and underground, and apparently there's a target demographic for those that really jump if you put that label on something like that. But that's not what indie means to me. I like to be cool and underground and whatsoever, but that's not the core of indie. And look at indie. I mean, the word says it. It's about independence, about freedom. But there's two very, very different kinds of freedom. There's freedom from something, and there's freedom for something. Now, freedom from something is comparatively easy to achieve. If you want to be free from all the shackles and chains of your publishers, then just self-publish. No one's stopping you. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's bloody hard to make a successful game while self-publishing it, but you're at least free. And then you're bound to make the same shit that everybody else is making because you don't know what to do with your shiny little freedom that you just got yourself there. And if being indie means just being free from a publisher, that would also mean that a behemoth like Epic would actually be an indie company. Or even worse, all those shitty little sweatshops that produce the 2048th clone of Angry Birds or Flappy Bird or whatever is currently on top of the charts would actually be legitimate indie studios, and that doesn't fly with my definition of the term. That's not what indie means for me. But there's the other kind of freedom that I was talking about. So that was freedom from. There's also freedom for something. And freedom for something means that you're free to do something, that you're actually free to achieve something with it. It means that you can go wild and try things and be creative, and it means you have some sort of plan, you have a goal, you have some sort of worthy cause that you're striving towards. It's the freedom to expand your horizon and to do things in a way that they haven't done before. I mean, if you want two shining examples of that, one sitting here and Team Junkfisher over there. So, these guys are doing it. Absolute kudos to you boys, by the way. And, we do have the freedom to do that, to challenge the status quo and to do things in new and exciting ways. And right now, with more and more people just going down the route of doing simple clones or doing the same games over and over and over again, even worse, obviously, in the AAA business where you get the same game for the last 12 years, or something like that. I'm afraid that the indie community is losing a bit of its spirit, that it's not aware anymore why we actually became indies. Now, I've been talking lots about indie spirit, and it's all been very artsy and for the greater good and everything. But if you've been talking to me beforehand, I'm not that altruistic. There is a business case in there as well. Because despite what I said about the indie bubble as a bubble, non-existent, that doesn't mean it's easy. There is a legitimate problem with gaining visibility on all marketplaces right now, not just Steam, also the mobile markets, general PC. It's all clogged. There's games coming in left, right, and center. And if you want to have the slightest chance of actually distinguishing ourselves from the rest and being apprehended, we need to make games that are different. Because otherwise, where's the point in making them? Where's the point in people buying them? If your game is not different, why should people pay money to get your game and not the clone that's sitting right next to it on the digital shelf? If you can't answer that question, then you probably shouldn't have made that game in the first place. Sorry, sounded a bit harsh, but I mean it. Now, you may not agree with my idea of indie. That's perfectly fine. Actually, if you don't agree, I'd really like to hear why and what you think indie is. I mean, there is a drinking session afterwards, and I will be there, so please come to me and please tell me. But I figured that part of the talk, that rather lengthy introduction, was necessary so you would understand why we are doing things the way we are going to do them with our next game. And our next game, ladies and gentlemen, I proudly present Contraband Empire. I give you a quick summary of the game. It's basically a simple trading simulation with a modern theme, but it's really heavily based on like the old school trade simulations of old, like Patricia or Hanse or a couple of other games that probably none of you have ever played before because you're way too young for that. And what it's all about is, as I said, it's a trade simulation, so you are running some sort of large scale, well, at the beginning, small scale, smuggling operation. You're buying goods from illegal goods, from all sorts of shady tradesmen, like, you know, some sort of purple meth from a guy in Albuquerque, or, I know, bootleg indie games from a sweatshop in China, or maybe some inside trade secrets from a shady suit up in Wall Street or something like that. And then you ship them to other countries where there's demand, sell them for a profit, increase your capacity to ship goods, increase your workshops where you're actually producing them, and just make a fortune and become insanely rich until the police catches you, or you get shot, or you just die of old age, something like that. I don't want to say much more about it, and you'll see why in a little bit. Though first, I'll take a slight sidestep here. The subtitle of this talk was, let me look it up, there we go, Guerrilla Warfare for Game Developers. It does tie in with that, don't worry. So, yeah, how does it come in? Well, if you look at the Wikipedia description, which is conveniently up there, I'll read it out loud as well, just in case, you know, some of you have problems with reading things, short-sighted or something. Wikipedia says, the strategy and tactics of guerrilla warfare tend to focus around the use of a small, mobile force, competing against a larger, more unwieldy one, and the guerrilla focuses on organizing in small units, depending on the support of the local population, as well as taking advantage of terrain more accommodating of small units. So how does that fit in with our game, with our company? Well, let's start at the beginning. Small mobile force, check, we've got that. We're a small studio, we're only 6 people at the moment. Everybody pretty much a jack of all trades in their field, so we're very, very flexible. We can scale up and down as we need to. Because we've got an amazing talent pool here in Dundee, and yeah, I think small mobile force, that works, that's covered. Competing against a larger unwieldy force, sort of, and the larger unwieldy force is obviously AAA development, but we're not really competing against them on, you know, the economic level, because their user base, their marketplaces, that's a whole different ball game. That we can't compete with them there. But we are competing in another field. There's a beautiful German term called Deutungshoheit. What it means is having the sovereignty over the definition of thought. So you basically control the meaning of words and events. And we are competing about the Deutungshoheit for what games should and should not be. Because apparently companies like EA or ActiBliz or Zynga think games should be some sort of industrial milking device to extract as much cash as possible out of their customers and their developers before throwing both of them in the bin. And I'll be fucking damned if I let that happen. Okay, next part. Taking advantage of terrain more accommodating of small units. Yep, check. And the game will be pretty small. We're currently looking at a development cycle of about 3 months until we get to MVP. And built for PC, probably some mobile platforms using Unity, so very accommodating for us. We've got platforms that have a very, very low barrier for entry, and we can use an engine that we are very, very comfortable with because we've, you know, used it for years and we know our way around there. Did you notice I skipped one part of the definition up there, actually? If you didn't, I did. I'll read it out for you again. It's in the middle there. The guerrilla focuses on organizing in small units, and now there's the important part. Depending on the support of the local population. Now, that's where things start getting interesting. That's where the early access sort of comes into play as well. Because how do we get the support of the local population, or any population of that for that matter? I mean, the local one, you're all here, so I'm pretty sure I've got that. And this part is where Contraband Empire hopefully really stands out. That's where we are trying to be different. That's where we are trying to be indie. Because right now, what you see here is all there is. Right? No single line of code has been written yet. No artwork, aside from the beautiful logo, thanks Matt, has been done yet. We do have a game design document, which is relatively fleshed out, but that is only a starting point. Because we want to make the creation of the game part of the game. Yeah. We're not just going to make an early access game. We're going to make a really, 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 really early access game. In fact, we're giving people access to the game before it's been made. Yeah. So how are we doing that? First, we're going to put the whole design document as it is right now online for everyone to see. And more importantly, for everyone to comment on. And we want to integrate players into the experience. We want them to contribute. We want them to make part of the development process. We want to see their ideas, and we want the community to rate their community ideas just as they would judge ours. Yeah. It's and you know, we really emphasize on that community interaction, and because I know it takes time and effort to look through a game design document, to find flaws, to play the game, to come up with new ideas. So we thought, hey, if they are putting in good work, we want to reward them as well. So for contributing to the project, you will actually get real-world rewards. Yeah. It starts with small things. Your name in the credits, maybe some sort of limited digital edition with extra events. But for really a lot of contribution, if you really contribute a lot, we want to properly reward you. So we want to give you something like, you know, signed art prints, or maybe even a special limited boxed edition of the game just for you, and there's only going to be 3 or 5 in the world, something like that, to really make it valuable. Yeah. And this is not just giving away free stuff to people to bribe them into buying or playing our game. You know, as we're expecting something in return, and what we're expecting is solid feedback and good ideas that are actually valued by the community. And the way we're going to emphasize that on a technical from a technical point is, in our wiki we have a comment section. You can think about it basically a bit like Reddit. So people can comment on a specific topic in the game design document. If you like it, you can upvote it. You can downvote it as well, but not lower than 0, because we don't want to punish people for bad ideas. We just want to not reward them for them. There's a difference. And then you accumulate your upvotes for your post. You get achievements as well, which give you additional points. So, you know, for your 50th post, for your first edit, for your first post with 10 upvotes, which give you additional points. And if, for example, an idea actually makes it into the game that you suggested, we will manually award you with extra points as well. And those points are then tied to our reward tiers. So the more you contribute and the better your contributions are, the more likely you are to get one of the really nice prizes. Now, the last part is also important, because the last part was, I skipped a bit there. No, the last part, it's also important that it's not going to be the community ultimately who's going to decide what's going in the game. We can't allow that, because otherwise it would become designed by committee. And if you ever worked with a bigger corporation for a contract project, then you know how that ends, and it's not pretty, I'm telling you that. So we will discuss everything, but it's still us that's going to make the decisions. But the discussion is vital. The discussion is the vital point. Even if we don't take on your ideas, we're trying to communicate back to you why not, why we made certain choices that will not be appreciated by the community. To do that, we'll run a blog side by side with the wiki, and we'll obviously be on all the social media. Well, almost. So the most important ones, like Facebook and Twitter, maybe Google+. And it's important for us to communicate because or to communicate everything, and with everything I mean really everything. I mean the game design, I mean the game balancing, I mean new features that go in, I mean the art style, I mean the audio even. And I even mean things like the revenue model. Actually, especially the revenue model, because I really believe in free-to-play within our purchases. I think it's a great model because it really allows the users to, effectively pay what they want or what they think the game is worth in a way, and still get a reward for it. And I do believe that you can make that work if you actually work together with the community and let them in and let them decide what they actually want to see in there, and not do it like the EA way where you fuck over your customers and, well, some of you probably have played Dungeon Keeper. It's no. Yeah. One more word for the blog. I think what's important with the blog posting and the Wikipedia thing is that it allows us to do something else, not just be a back channel to the customers and talk to them, but also to tell our development story, from the humble beginnings with a great idea over to the inevitable hardships and the pain and suffering that will come, up to the ultimate glory where our game will arise from the shadows and be the ultimate pinnacle of indie awesomeness. Sorry, I got carried away there a little bit. Yeah. There's one more thing that I want to mention, but that's a bit up in the air at the moment. We are also planning to actually open source the game, though there are some difficulties with it. The first one is we don't want to open source everything straight away, mainly because 2048 has shown us how that can end, and we don't want to make it that easy for the copycats. And the other problem is that we will use some third-party software like Unity add-ons and stuff like that, and open sourcing them is obviously a problem. So we need to see what we can actually put out and when we can put it out. But we are trying and we are working on it. So building the community first has one more advantage that is maybe not as obvious. Probably to a lot of you it is, but it's those people that actually engage in your community, that are actually trying to, help you out, are not just your players, they are also your first evangelists. Those are the people that will actually go out and tell people about your game and tell people how awesome your game is, because it's not just your game anymore. It's not just a game anymore. It's their game as well. And you know yourself, if you're making games, how much easier it is to go out and actually advertise your own games. I'm just doing that here live on stage. Okay. We are aware that this might be a catastrophic failure. That we might miss deadlines, or that feature creep will become even more of a problem because there's a lot more feature requests that we're expecting to come in. Need to be careful about that. Or, the worst possible thing that could happen is that nobody just gives a shit about the project and participates at all. We are aware that this might happen, but we're still trying it. Because if that actually works, if it actually works to get the community on board and make the game together with them, that's going to be one epic hell of a ride for everyone involved. Not just for us, for the players as well. And that's what makes me really, really excited about that project. I've come to the end now, so I've got two favours to ask from you. The first one is to please get involved in our project. You can find it at contrabandempire.com. The soft launch starts on you can not find it yet, but the soft launch is on the 28th, which incidentally is also our 3rd birthday as a company. And the full launch is planned for the 15th of July, just after the World Cup, so there won't be any football games in play in the way anymore. Get involved. We're mainly looking for people for the soft launch that, just try out the website, making sure that nothing's breaking horribly, give us a bit of feedback, making sure the user experience is as smooth as possible. That's the one selfish thing. The second thing I'm going to ask you is not for me or my company or the game. The second thing is for you, especially I know there's a couple of their students back there, so especially for you. The favor I'm asking from you is that you at least try and be bold and be brave and to try out new things and to really go to places where nobody ever was before and to try things out and maybe fail, and then you stand up and you try again, and you're not being EA to fuck over your customers. You're not one of those cloners that just makes the 12th millionth version of, Angry Flappy 48 whatsoever. You're not that soft-washed shite that the music industry is selling us as indie. I want you to be hard rock. I want you to be fucking punk rock. And more than anything else, I want you to be fucking indie! Thank you. Any questions? Yo.
On the subject of people coming in and actually helping make the game, in your talk as well, you mentioned Epic Games being possibly an indie studio that kind of have publishing attached.
Yeah.
They're actually doing exactly the same thing with the next Unreal Tournament.
Anyone
who owns Unreal Engine 4 can develop Unreal Tournament, and it will be free for everyone around the world.
Awesome, I really need to look at that actually. So maybe
based
Epic are not that bad yet.
There's research, it might be useful.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for letting me know that. All right. Anyone else? Yep.
So to pick up on what you said about community and getting the community invested in the game right from the beginning, which I really agree with. I think that's a really good point for retention and relationship with the game. Isn't it kind of a double-edged sword? Because we see with things like Kickstarter where people feel like they own something. They're much more critical and they're much quicker to feel kind of a personal attack if you don't do something they like.
Maybe, but I mean, that's the whole point as well. We want people to be really that attached to the project, and we're hoping that with explaining why we have to do certain things, while still remaining a certain level of control over the game, that we will hopefully keep them calm, basically. Yeah. If not, you can't make everyone happy. You just can't. There's always going to be people that get incredibly angry because you didn't do their pet feature. Shit happens, you lose them. Hopefully you retain the other 100. That's the idea. Yep.
On a similar note, what if someone in the community comes up with an idea which is genuinely really shit, but then again some traction, and it's an idea that you really don't want? Will you as a company decide not to do that idea, or will you stick it in the game because it was uploaded by the community?
If it's really, really, really shit, then we do what I just said. We probably don't do it. We put out a blog post. But frankly, if an idea actually manages to get traction in the community, then it's probably a good idea. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, yes, it is our game, and yes, we have some certain constraints. And with those constraints, I can usually explain things. If I can't, and I just think the idea is shit, yet it gains traction, then it's probably me that's wrong. Yo.
I'm probably going to be a bit like a PR vampire here, but you say that you're going to build your community and sort of do blogs and stuff like that, but how are you actually going to get people to go go, oh, this is a cool idea, oh, these balls are here, I'm really interested in that. I see a lot of people who are either in indie companies are giving advice to indie companies, go, oh yeah, you need to build a community, but they don't actually tell you how it is. And it's hard, it's fucking soft.
Oh yeah, I know.
So I mean, it's one of those things like, yeah, you can do your forums, you can do your sort of like,
yeah, no, I get that.
How you're actually driving people to those themselves and make it look like a good idea and worth investing in the first place.
Frankly, but trying to do the usual route. So we've got our social media channels. We're leveraging the Guerilla T channel, obviously, as well, since it's a Guerilla T game. We've got press contacts. We're hoping that seeing that it is an interesting concept, or at least something that's not been done apparently that often before, we can get some additional press coverage through that. We hope to get at least some people excited enough to spread the word. At the end of the day, we don't know if it's working. We really don't. That's what I meant with, this might be a horrible failure and nobody gives a shit about it. But we're trying, and I think what also will help is that we're constantly releasing updates. You know, those blog posts and everything is constantly coming out, new releases, everything. So even if it doesn't have the initial user base right at the start, maybe it'll pick it up before the project is finished. That's the idea. But whether it's going to work or not, I can't say. I really can't. I just know it's something we thought is worth trying. Yep.
Can I? Yeah, go ahead.
Just, you know.
It's a brainstorm, based on what you just said, how eventually you would want at least the part to go open source, even when there will be some licensed parts like plugins and everything.
Yeah.
You see, like, it just popped in my head. It's like, there are a few, I don't have like a case study on it, but when you look even to those, I don't know, name on IGDA and AAA titles, but when you look on the really successful games in the past, lots of them attract the attention of the community by providing the tool sets, which could, like, the users can actually create their own content.
Yeah, modding stuff. Like, I've thought about modding. At the moment, it's not part of the game design document because it's not thought out enough yet, and I don't really know what the community will want yet. And with not having anything built, it's obviously a bit difficult to actually judge what will be needed. But yeah, it's certainly something we're thinking about. In addition to open sourcing the actual, source code and probably even some art assets or something like that. But yeah, we've certainly been thinking about that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just a very similar vein to that. The Prison Architect guys had a very clear idea from the very beginning of what they wanted to make, and they've been going along that path and going along that path. And we've had people saying, "We want this, we want that." They've stuck to their milestones, and they've not been afraid to say no to the people who say, okay, we want this, we want that, because it changes their original game.
Yeah.
But they've had a lot of success in opening up modding support for Prison Architect. So originally it was just things like localization, translations and stuff. And now people have actually completely re-rigged the engine so that instead of simulating a prison, you're simulating a hotel or something.
Listen, I've stayed in Best Western, it's not that different.
It could be argued that a lot of that success has come down to the fact that it's semi-open source, but there's still a core team driving.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely necessary. I mean, that was what I said. What I meant when I was saying, we're not going to do design by committee. The ultimate decision, the final decisions, will still be made by us. We're still the ones. We are the vision keepers of that project. We are the guys that have the idea of what it has to be, and the community can show us what it could be, or maybe what it should be, and we're taking that into account. But we're not gonna let the initial, the core vision, get diluted. It's always gonna be, that trades game where you're selling drugs. So. Yeah, what? Yeah, sure.
The thing is, with that modding, I think that would give you a really good safe haven, where you can actually very quickly distinguish, this is our vanilla, this is our game which we want to release. And on the side, as Alex just mentioned, that some part of the community might be very, sensitive what they want. and they will still have that opportunity.
Oh yeah, no, I totally get that. I think modding tools are probably something if we do end up including them, and we probably will, we want to include them relatively early as well. Because I think the modding and the balancing and stuff like that the community can provide is something we can ideally also take and say, right, hey, look, this is so good. Here's $100. We're taking that into the game or something like that, you know, or maybe just we're taking that into the game. Thanks for using our tool. Depends on how much booze I needed at that point. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think modding tools is a great addition, or would make a great addition to that game as well. Right. Yo.
You mentioned that you were planning a 3-month dev cycle.
Yeah, for MVP.
How long are you going to run this experiment for until you decide that it's really good or really bad?
No, I think the 3-month, the initial dev cycle is what's going to run either way. That's what I've planned for. You know, I'm very well aware that because I've got, you know, to do contract work with the company on the side as well, I'm gonna have crunch hell for 3 months there. But that's what I signed up for, and that what I knew I was getting into. After those 3 months, when we have the MVP, whether the community was involved or not, then we need to see what we're going to do about it. I mean, the ideas at the moment are either going green light or early access, trying to do a Kickstarter with it, trying to get additional investment from outside sources, publish it, or, you know, just go ahead with it and do it either way, just because we can. But it's those 3 months that's when we have something that we can show around, and from there we see where it goes. I mean, we probably start, you know, looking into the different avenues that we could go a bit beforehand, when we can already see how things are going, what we want to do with it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's those initial 3-month MVP, and then we open up. Yep.
So you were talking about the indie bubble, fostering your community. I'm part of an independent team who went through Steam Early Access and released back in February, and we found the whole fostering the community was invaluable.
Yeah.
But Valve are pushing more and more towards making Steam decentralized and letting everybody just publish themselves without this core thing. And that's really where they want to take Greenlight. Do you feel that's better? Because that basically dilutes everything and makes it, in my opinion, harder to establish that community.
It lowers the barrier to entry, which may be a good thing. I mean, as it is, I don't think it makes things much worse for us. You know, because if you don't have the community, you won't get through Greenlight, and if you don't have the community, if there is no Greenlight, you still won't have anybody buying your game because they can't find it. So you need to have that at some level, anyways. So I don't think it makes much of a difference. If anything, it probably makes it easier because some people, you know, won't be able to gather the community initially before they have their product ready, but then still be able to put it up on Steam. And I mean, the only reason to put it up on Steam is because you get at least some visibility, and more importantly, you give people a certain level of comfort to handle your game, as opposed to just putting it out for download somewhere where they download and install and something like that. Steam is just easier and more convenient for people. So I think it probably evens out pretty much, but I think it's probably actually going to be beneficial for people. Yeah. Yep.
You just indicated that we should make a game that is different from other games. So what is the evaluation? How can we evaluate that a game is different?
That is a difficult question if I ever heard one. I don't know. I think you just look around and see what's there and what has been done and how things have been done, and then you try and either make something that hasn't done before, or take things that, you know, that have been done before, but combine them in a new way. Just be innovative. You know, is the main point is you don't have to be Genova Chen or someone that comes up with those absolutely insane ideas, like Journey, for example. It doesn't need to go that far, but at least, you know, be a little bit brave and a little bit bold, and try to be a little bit innovative, and ideally a bit more than a lot of AAA companies are at the moment. Like again, EA, I'm sorry for bashing them so much today, but that actually sold us 360 degrees of movement in FIFA as an innovation, as opposed to the however many degrees that was. How is that not in there in the first place, for Jesus Christ? But that's not what innovation is. You just need to get one step further. I think the best indicator for whether your project is different or innovative is if you have to take a leap of faith. Yeah. If you need to say, right, okay, here's failing, here's succeeding. I don't know which one it is, but I go either way. That's it. Cool.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alex.